is there a credible scenario in which the profitability of making GPUs for the AI market becomes so overwhelmingly favorable that there is no commercial incentive for Nvidia or AMD to produce any gaming GPUs at any level, not even APUs for consoles? This is kind of like an expression of one of the fears that is manifesting, bearing in mind just how successful Nvidia specifically is at the moment in terms of essentially having a stranglehold on the AI silicon market. Oliver, what do you think about this? I've got my own thoughts, which I'll share shortly, but I'm curious what you think about it.
I mean, right now, there is an argument that is to a substantial degree the case, because if you look at a B100 GPU, for instance, Nvidia is selling that for like $35,000 or so. Bill of materials, I have seen some third-party analysis that says it's like in the $6,000 range, $5,000, $6,000 to produce one of those GPUs, which is a dual die GPU product. And it's produced on a pretty similar process node to consumer GPUs. It's the 4NP process as opposed to the 4N process. Right. But I think a big part of the problem here is that if you give up gaming, you might be giving up gaming forever or for a long time. And data center demand isn't necessarily infinite, and AI demand may not be sustained, exponentially into the future as it has been thus far. Right now, NVIDIA's data center and non-data center revenue split is something like 80% data center, 20% non-data center, of which gaming is some portion. But it could go back to something closer to 50-50 or 40-60 even, like it was pre-AI, pre this AI boom. And if that happens, I think you'd want a gaming market to return to and to have some revenue in, and to not have ceded all that market to a competitor. Because between AMD, NVIDIA, and now Intel, if one market participant withdraws, then there will be multiple market participants claiming their market share, right? And continuing to iterate with new gaming products and new gaming drivers and things like that. So I think definitely the profit center for companies like NVIDIA, definitely the profit centers or potential profit centers continue to remain in the AI sphere and the data center sphere, where there are enormous profits to be made. But I don't think they want to leave the gaming market, because the potential for that data center market to not necessarily always be there with the huge profit margins that it entails at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Here's my theory on this is that, basically, it comes down to availability of wafers, right, to accommodate all of these different markets. I'd say that obviously when the 50 series cards came out, there were a shortage of cards, right, and there were some crazy prices as a result of that. However, the AI boom has not subsided. Nvidia is still selling gigantic amounts of silicon and to the market. However, I can go onto the internet now. I can buy a 5090, £2,000, anything up to like £2,400. All of the models seem to be available. It kind of suggests to me that Nvidia is able to sustain a market where they can sell gaming GPUs while at the same time selling a gigantic amount of AI hardware as well. So, if that shortage had continued, that would suggest that there was like a shortage of 4nm wafers. And then they would be prioritizing whatever's giving them the best margin. However, the sort of ground truth, as it were, in terms of retail suggests that actually there is room to actually service the AI market while at the same time servicing the gaming GPU market at the same time as well. I also think from a business perspective, it's really difficult to justify putting all your eggs in one basket. Because you just never know what's going to happen next.
That's very true.
Yeah, so I think, I don't really think there's a problem about it at the moment. I think the issue is possibly that there is a stagnation in terms of hardware design, because 50 series is running on pretty much the exact same process node as 40 series. So new products have emerged, but they aren't game changing in any way, like 40 series eclipse 30 series, for example. Mm-hmm. So I think that's probably the more curious thing to be taking a look at, as the extent to which not running your new GPU architecture on the latest process node is impacting the market. But at the same time, I don't really see AMD doing anything different, because they too are in the same markets as Nvidia. Tom, what do you think?
I think the point about not putting your eggs in one basket holds true for this one, and that is, if in terms of business sense, you just want to diversify into as many markets as you can. Samsung does this brilliantly with just about every form of tech under the sun, and it's definitely true of the that Nvidia's and AMD's sort of area as well. You've got to have a backup plan if one thing fails. AI is not going anywhere. Obviously, gaming is not going anywhere, and there's going to be a huge demand for gaming products going into for decades and decades. I don't see any change there. So really, it's about the bottleneck. Whether there's factory, capacity and the materials to make them.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that if AI had such a huge impact on available wafers for chips, it wouldn't just be GPUs that would be in danger, right? Smartphones. Basically, Nvidia and AMD would be buying up every wafer at whatever the price.
That's true, yeah.
Because there'd still be gigantic margins there, and yet we're still able to sustain this world where silicon is being used for a huge diversity of different things. I'm not hugely concerned about availability of GPUs. Obviously, there was issues with the launch of 50 series and indeed RDNA 4 that saw some pretty egregious price increases. But what are we now? 7 months on, 7 months on, and availability seems to be fine overall.
Yeah, I would say maybe one or two caveats to that point. One thing is that these products are being made on last generation processes by the standards of mobile phones. It's like your new mobile phones, your Apple products, those are all being made for the most part on TSMC 3 nanometer processes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Especially on the high end. Now, maybe with older products, you're still looking at like 4 nanometer or 5 nanometer class processes from different vendors. But for the newest stuff, you're looking at 3 nanometer almost exclusively your Samsungs, your Apple phones, your Xiaomi phones, things like this potentially. And then in terms of the issue of capacity, that's actually an interesting concept because I think consumer capacity is well stated at the moment. When you look at the back orders for like NVIDIA's B100 chips, last year they were reported as having a 12-month backlog for those chips. So I'm not sure that market has been fully sated. And again, those are, extremely high margin chips. Maybe at some point they do perceive that they will have some slackening of that demand and they'll be able to meet demand fully, but I'm not sure they're there at the moment, especially when you look at like these new AI installations with like just gigantic chip orders. And not all those orders are for B100s, not all those orders are for NVIDIA GPUs, but a very large proportion of these new data center build-outs are indeed B100s, are next generation NVIDIA GPUs, Rubin GPUs, whatever might come down the line. And that will take some significant capacity. So yeah, I'm not too sure. I would expect that over the long haul, they have some estimation they'll be able to meet demand, at least on the current margin, but getting there might be challenging.